Welcome to the Building and Growing podcast. We're delighted to have Dan Stuart with us today. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having me. I feel right at home.
That's it. So, for the audience, Dan is the owner of Jukebox Studios, where, every podcast that I've recorded in London has been recorded here, and you'll recognise the background and the fit out. It's all thanks to this fella right here.
That's it. I'm the guy behind the camera. Hopefully I'll put it on.
That's it. They're on.
Here. They're on.
Lights are on.
Music, podcasts, studios. I just wanted to kind of make a hub, a place where people can come and create and own their own content. There's a lot of studios out there that almost created podcast networks where they own a share of your podcast and blah 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 and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just wanted a place where you can record for cheap, and you own your stuff, and it's kind of, it doesn't price people out.
Fantastic, yeah. And look, I mean, you've done a great job of that. I know that, myself, I've had a great experience here. All the guests have. Their clients as well that I've referred to use it have as well. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for sending them.
No worries. So look, Let's dive into your background. I should also say to the audience that you're also commonly known as Savage Dan, which I'm sure that we'll hear the story about. But you're probably one of the people with the most interesting backgrounds that I've ever met. From boxing to football, to production. But let me hand over to you. It's always better to hear the story from the man himself.
I don't know where I begin. I love sports. Football will have always been my first love.
Yep.
I'm a big Chelsea fan, which is bad for us right now. But football was my world. But I never saw it as a profession, and I still don't. I'm not a footballer, of course, but as in, there was a period of time where I took football very seriously. I still play as often as I can. It's where I get my endorphins from. That's where I'm free from whatever pressures I've got going on. I cross the white line and I worry about everything else once I get back on the other side. For now, I'm just chasing a ball and kicking a ball, and I love it. And without it, I probably wouldn't have the personality I have today. I've learned so much through football. I've been to Brazil, played football in Brazil. I've played for every flipping borough team that there was growing up. I loved to play.
Yes.
I also loved boxing. I fell in love with boxing, and I still work in boxing. I still work in football as well, with Chelsea,
Nice.
and part of my job, not so much now, but definitely what it was to kind of humanize the players. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, players are seen as gods or untouchable, and sometimes you just want to have a chat with them about anything. What you watching on Netflix, and what kind of trainers you buying, what kind, stuff that basically makes them more like us.
Yes.
They're so used to playing in front of 60,000 people, and everyone either criticizing them or adoring them, and sometimes they're just like us.
Yeah,
they just
indeed.
kick a ball and they're extremely rich. So because I have a bit of a media presence, I just found it quite easy to kind of merge into those worlds.
Yes.
Football, boxing, music. Obviously, these studios, we're in Studio B right now, which is like a room that can do it all.
Indeed.
So there'll be music sessions in here, but we have the main music studio obviously on the other side of that wall. Music obviously was a part of my life. It's a part of everyone's life, but I started kind of creating and producing and engineering.
Yep.
From around 17 years old.
Wow.
And it started in my bedroom, like everyone should, I guess.
I
didn't go to a music college. I didn't study it. I learned it just by trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And then, people are coming to your house and making mixtapes, and all of a sudden, you're making music that sounds like music. It starts out with just a crash and a bang. You don't know what you're doing, and it sounds terrible. And then before you know it, it takes a while, but you'll be able to make stuff that sounds like a Drake track.
Yes.
And it's a learning curve that's either steep or it's kind of shallow for some people. Some people take a long time. I was quite quick with learning what things should sound like. And yeah, so that was my music thing. And then boxing, obviously, I think I was doing all three at the same time. I don't know how I had the time to do it, but I would be playing football, boxing 3 times a week, four more than 3. You can't even really get away with 3 anymore, because there's someone out there training 5 times a week.
Yes.
As an amateur, not getting paid. You're paid. So I was doing music, boxing, and football, all at the same time. And I think they're the 3 things I loved. And I was paying to do these things.
Yeah, far out.
So as soon as I found a way to get paid to do all 3 things, some days it feels like I wake up and I'm not really working.
Yeah.
I'm just going through the motions and I'm doing the things that I love, except now that I get paid for it. So I'm kind of like very fortunate to be in this position, but I'm just one of those people that has to do something that they love.
Yeah.
I would suffer in an environment where I just didn't enjoy it.
Indeed. And look, I love the point that you made about, you eventually got to a point where you got paid to do those things. So I'm wondering, both for all 3, football, boxing, music, if you can talk us through what that sort of
music
point was.
I started in my room, and to be fair, the payment started there. I think I didn't realize, but I was creating a business.
Yes.
But I was just doing it for myself. I made music, I rapped, like everyone growing up in the area did. So it's like, it actually came around, funnily enough, because I broke my leg. So I broke my leg, and I was terrible on crutches. So going to pirate radio stations or to the youth club where there was a studio was impossible for me now, just because I couldn't be bothered to kind of like get on the crutches and make my way there.
Yeah.
So instead, I bought like a very, like a horrible quality mic and an audio interface, and probably spent a £90 on speakers or something like that. Really cheap and a very flawed setup. But I used that to that was the birth of me learning to start engineering and, like producing music.
Yes.
I can't tell you the time frame. Maybe it was a couple of years before people are now coming to mind to like make songs in my bedroom. And it might be my friend who doesn't pay, and it might be my friend's friend who does pay, and and all of a sudden it's like, £15 an hour to like come and make these songs. And so before you know it, I had quite a decent amount of people coming through, and I was just like, it doesn't make any sense, people coming to your house. Let's try and find a cheap unit.
Yep.
And basically start, Jukebox Studios is what it became. I don't know how I came up with the name, but it came out of that. Yes. Almost the inconvenience of people always coming to your house. So let's go and find somewhere. It wasn't too far from here, actually, probably a 5-minute walk from here. It was the first unit ever I had. And that's it. It started from there. And then we made a song, Western Into.
Oh, yes, I know the one. Yeah.
And that was within probably, I don't even think there was a door on the booth.
Far out.
Yeah. They're obviously, they were friends. So it's not like that was a session that was paid for.
Yeah.
So that happened, and before you know it, it was charting. I think it went double platinum in Australia. Yeah. It did ridiculous numbers. It was one of the songs that kind of changed the music scene in a way. I think it completely changed the direction of where music went in the UK. Yes. And before you know it, labels were taking a lot more chances on people that were unknown. Before labels were signing people that already had done the legwork for them.
Yeah.
This was the first time, in my opinion, that they'd signed an urban act from scratch, pretty much.
Yeah.
Took a chance and it went well. And since then, they've just anyone they think can go, they sign it.
That's it.
Um,
And just
yeah.
just to give a little bit of context for the audience there, I think this was like late 2015, early 2016.
That was
Like,
I opened the studio, I think February 2015.
nice, yeah, yeah.
And that song would have been made March or
March,
April.
yeah.
Um,
Because I remember it was my final semester at uni. I was in Turkey,
Yeah.
and I heard it, but I think I heard it thanks to Spotify.
yes.
So I mean, it was kind of right at that
So
moment.
it was
where-
right at the moment where streaming just came out. So the
Yeah.
first version of that song was just on SoundCloud.
Yes, yeah.
There was nothing. I don't think there was Spotify just yet then. And then obviously it was out. It was out, and then a label purchased it, so it had to basically come back off the shelves.
Okay.
They repackaged it, made a new video, made a new everything,
Yeah.
and put it back out.
Nuts.
And that's when everyone else got it, probably 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was the beginning of like the popularity from that song probably helped the studio, and then you also had the podcast boom at the same time, and things just started to grow and grow and grow and grow. So that
Indeed.
was the way I started getting paid for music.
Yes.
Football was a little bit different. Obviously, I'd played amateur, semi-pro, I'd been to Brazil.
I love it how you just casually drop it. You
That's
know,
the
yeah,
best
I've played
place.
in Brazil.
Yeah,
It's
that is,
like,
honestly, that's
incredible.
the best place ever. But the most money I ever made from football is gonna be from the media side of football.
yeah.
Which was, you know, I'm part of a podcast called Filthy Fellas,
Okay.
which is one of the biggest UK football podcasts, I'd say.
Nice.
A lot of popularity, and because of it, you end up with, you know, like numerous brand deals. So we'll do like JD Sports shoots,
Yep.
where I'll wear a Chelsea top and I'll be on Oxford Street for the whole year, basically, in the posters, etc., etc. It was almost like a shop window for talent.
Yes.
Or is almost like a shop window for talent. I keep saying was. I'm still in this position now. I'm still doing this. And you know, you ended up doing a lot of stuff with Chelsea, which is crazy for me because I'm a Chelsea fan. I've got a Chelsea badge tattooed on my chest.
Yes. Yeah.
So I ended up being part of the Matchday Live squad, doing a show on Chelsea's YouTube.
Nice.
Becoming quite close to some of the players. Obviously, it's Chelsea, so there's loads of players in and out. The squad now, probably there isn't one person from the squad 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So like it's different times, different players. But yeah, you know, stuff like having a live show. Every home match
Yep.
would be on the pitch. And you know, it's amazing because it's my childhood club.
Yeah.
But obviously that was, you know, it's football, and I would pay to go to football matches, and now I'm getting paid to go to the same football matches.
Indeed.
Front row seats, all access. I've walked down the tunnel, like, so it becomes like, it was surreal, but it was, I guess, another door that just opened for me, and all of a sudden one of my passions has turned to a paid career.
Indeed.
Boxing for me is the most brutal sport in the world. I know there'll be something else out there that is more brutal, but as far as a sport, it is by far for me the most punishing.
Yeah.
You make a mistake, and it's not like tennis or football. You make your biggest mistake will cost you a goal. In boxing, your biggest mistake can cost you your life.
Indeed.
And no mistake, someone else's mistake can cost you your life. You know, like someone, if you go for a brain scan and they don't pick up a bleed on the brain, and then you get that could cost you your life. You know, and it happens far less than it used to, but it happens.
Yes.
But I think boxing is what everyone at some point in their life should experience, whether it just be in the gym, a spar, not necessarily just the boxer size, but I think understanding like the combat element of it. Some people look at it and they're like, it's violent, and I can't love it because it's violent. And I hear where they're coming from, but there is chess. It's just a brutal game of chess.
Yes.
So I love that sport. I always actually thought that I would be a boxer. There was a point where I was really zoned in.
Yep.
And, you know, you're training however many times a week, and you're going on your runs, and every night you go to sleep and you're thinking of a fight.
Yeah.
And you're dreaming of you know, like a title. And I got not introduced to boxing, but I was into boxing more because one of my friends was a pro boxer. So I would see him training, obviously him winning ABAs and you know, winning national titles, and then going and being pro and fighting in Germany, and stuff like that. So it was inspiring to see. So I'm like, I'm gonna give it a go, and I'm naturally athletic.
Yes.
So you give me a baseball bat, it won't take me too long to figure out a swing. You give me a golf club, it won't take me too long. Anything that requires like balance, movement, anything like that, I fancy myself at.
Indeed.
Plus, if you got a big enough ego in boxing, that would do you well as well. Just because you think you're better than you are, there's a slight delusion to boxers that I feel like you have to have it in order to just think you're superior to the person that's in the opposite corner.
Indestructible.
Yeah, that's
sort
it.
Of
you know,
mindset.
you've got to feel that way, because more than half of boxing is just between the ears.
Yeah,
I'd say they say 90%. I think that's just something that's been coined, but a huge part of it is just here. You know, believing in yourself, and you will perform different to somebody that has all the physical attributes but doesn't believe in themselves.
Yes.
So I think boxing can show you a lot about yourself, and about where you're at, and it can humble you very quickly. You will walk home from the gym knowing you've been battered. Yeah. And knowing that you have to go back and face that guy probably in 3 days' time.
Yes.
To either get battered again, and you've got to make some kind of adjustment. You know, you go home worse for wear. But you've got to learn from it faster than like the kind of trauma stays with you. You know, when you're in the ring getting peppered with shots and you feel tired and he doesn't look tired, and then you know you've got to do that again. It's a punishing thought, but you've got to find a way to turn the screw.
Indeed.
And I think I just learned so many life lessons from it. In terms of, you know, every day there'll be times where people wake up, for example, and they're not in the mood, and they don't really fancy attacking this day, but they have to put a brave face on. Yeah. And you have to make it seem like you want to attack this day. And I think that's half of the battle for like just everyone out there. There's so many life lessons in sports that I learned. Yeah. And then obviously, you know, like things just happen in a strange way for me where I end up back in boxing, but not in the ring. Yes. And I'm doing the media stuff, and I am not necessarily the media stuff. I'm more upstairs, you know. I'm part of Boxer, which is the UK's leading promoter, Sky Sports. Every fight you see on Sky Sports, you will see me sitting right there ringside next to the promoter Ben Shalom. Yes. And it's kind of gone full circle. You know, some of the boys that I would have sparred or been an amateur at the same time as are fighters that are like lived out their dreams. They're entering the ring. Yes. You know, and it's like a gladiator kind of experience being there and like being engulfed in it. You look around, you see the fans everywhere, phone lights everywhere. Yeah, yeah. It's another surreal experience. So like, I am super fortunate to be living the dreams I thought I would live, but just in a different way. I thought I'd be the one coming down the ramp. Yes. Now instead I come down the ramp during the site visit at 4 p.m, not at 8 p.m for the actual fight. Yeah. So I'm still experiencing everything I ever wanted to experience, just without the money and the stars, the stardom, I guess. Yeah.
But no, look, I mean, that's fantastic. I'm going to bring it back a little bit, just to something that you said initially, you know, that like some of your first sort of jobs in terms of music and producing, which then you've been able to apply in boxing and football. You know, it was like £15 an hour, you know, but the point is that you started, and, you know, you mentioned that with Western, you know, it was sort of like maybe one of your mates, you know, but it went viral. And I guess the point that I want to make to the audience is what you were doing was being consistent and having a go and, you know, like building up traction. You move from the bedroom to the small unit. Like, this success doesn't happen overnight. Of course. It's that journey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, success is like, of course, relative, you know, and what some person deems as success is not what someone else does. But for me, I wake up and I am doing every day what I want to do.
Yeah.
So for me, that is quite warming. Because I wake up and I come to the studio and I'm like, actually, I like this place because I built this place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it becomes almost my man cave, that other studio where I'm just like, oh, I need to, it's a nice environment to work in.
Yes.
Or I go to the boxing, and yes, it can be highly strung at times and it can be quite stressful and all of that, but it's all the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But you're right, it wasn't by coincidence. I was prepared for these opportunities. And I'm talking about boxing and Boxer. Like, I wasn't in boxing before then. I was with JD Sports. I headed up their content. I've been all over the world covering fights.
Yes.
I'm like some of the biggest boxers in the world, AJ, stuff like that. Like, I've known them for years.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I was already kind of in position when Boxer came in and was just like, Dan, do you fancy working over here?
Yeah.
I was already in position for it. It was the easiest transitions. Everything I've ever done hasn't been big jumps.
Yep.
Because I was already almost there. The Chelsea one perhaps is the biggest one, because no matter what you're doing in football, you don't expect Chelsea Football Club to reach out to you and say, are you interested in doing this?
Indeed.
So that most of the things I've done are things that I don't know if it's self-fulfilling prophecy, if there's some kind of energy out there that I put out there, but I was at some point obsessed with everything that I'm doing now. Yep. I was obsessed with music. I was obsessed with boxing. I was obsessed with football. And to a certain degree, I still am. I'm just the adult version of obsessed.
Yes.
And I'm like, the novelty may have worn off just a little bit, but I still get pinch me moments.
Yeah, indeed.
But yeah, I guess it's like, whatever you're doing, stay consistent and don't worry about kind of other people's timing, I guess. There were plenty of people that were doing far more than me, and far better than me, but if you focus on that, you'll just put yourself in a dark place, and a bit of a place where you're comparing yourself to everyone else. Do what makes you happy. Doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me.
Yes.
I just like to do the things that make me happy, and if I didn't do the things that would make me happy, I would be, my poker face, even with boxing, isn't good enough.
Yeah.
For me to do stuff that I don't enjoy doing. You'll see it.
Oh, I think that's inspirational, the fact that you focused on it. And like you said just then often never is like a massive big step, Chelsea being the exception. It's just, being consistent, building those little bits of traction. And sometimes they say, you go and walk in the dark, you can only see 100 feet in front of you. Yeah. But once you get to 100 feet, you can see the next thing. Yeah.
I would say also, my mum says this because I'm a Gemini, but I am really hard to keep captivated.
Yeah.
Hence probably why I was doing all three things at the same time: boxing, football, and music. Most people, stable people out there, have one passion and one thing that they're really interested in.
Yeah.
One goal, one stuff like that. I think for them, it's probably far easier because they're less distracted. I'm like a meerkat. Yeah. And I'm like, right, once we have a fight week and fight week's over on a Sunday morning, where no matter where we are in the country, I'm straight on the M1 back.
Yep.
And I want to get back in the studio because I haven't been here for 5 days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to get back here. I'm almost done with boxing.
Yes.
And then I want to play football. And then it's like I need all three things to almost keep me going, whereas somebody else is going to be far more satisfied with one thing. But if I just had boxing and I only had to concentrate on boxing, which is what most people in boxing do, by the way, and because of it they are great at what they do, I'm far less effective than people who stay in one field.
Yes.
I would probably be quite bored. There's probably not enough movement and things happening. I need I need more than one thing to keep me kind of motivated.
Indeed. And look, I mean, I think diversifying in life, just as a general rule, is not, a bad choice.
Exactly.
Look, Dan, this has been fantastic so far. I'm gonna go back to our conversation about when Into was released. We talked a little bit about how SoundCloud, was popular then. Spotify was emerging. Fast forward now, we're in 2024, and people are able to sort of go viral on TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. I wanted to, sort of hear from you how, let's say, the go-to-market for a musician has changed relative to back then.
It's insane now. Honestly, I can't believe what I'm seeing, because put it this way, the journey from your first studio session to headlining wireless would have been years before.
Yeah.
You would have had to drop this and do this, and the journey from the bottom to the top was a long journey.
Yes.
And you needed to really want it in order to do it. Now, what month are we in? We're in March. You could drop your first tune today, or you have your first studio session today, and you could headline wireless in July.
Yeah.
And it is that simple, just based on moments, viral moments, and short form content. Seems to be the go-to now, and it feels like everyone is harder to captivate now. Everyone has become me.
Yes.
Basically, it's much harder to keep people's attention. Probably the introduction of phones and Gen Z and all of that means that nowadays anything that gets you in the first 10-15 seconds, that's what wins.
Indeed.
So it's the same for music. TikTok came around and has completely changed everything.
Yes.
And all the other apps are having to kind of jostle for position and almost adapt very quickly, because we've moved on again, and technology always does that.
Yeah.
But it's happened again, and TikTok is making people famous. And I'm not a big TikTok person. I'm all over TikTok, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But I don't ever go on the app, because I remember the first time going on it, and it just wouldn't stop playing videos.
Yeah.
And it kind of intimidated me. I just closed the app. I was like, all right, I don't even know how to make this stop.
Yeah. And they get your attention straight away.
That's it, with the dramatic music.
Yes.
And it's just like, boom, have you done this? Like, it's really good. I get it. And because of it, artists and music have had to evolve. I'm pretty sure, is it Warner? Is it Warner? Someone's in a dispute at the moment, one of the major labels, with TikTok, over what's allowed to be on there. I know there's loads of fair use policies and stuff like that, but the labels are basically saying we're not getting the money for this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how things are evolving, but it's like the best and worst time to be a musician.
Yeah.
Because the market, the barrier to entry is so low now. Anybody can get in the studio, make a song, and it doesn't have to be good for you to make money off it. That's the new thing that's changing the game.
Yeah.
It can just be strange or different.
Yes.
Or the video can just be outrageous. If somebody paints himself in blue and jumps off a roof, it might just seem like he's just done that. But really, the amount of impressions that can achieve means that he could get a ridiculous amount of money and probably signed. And now he's on this show, and now he's getting paid to be everywhere. So the level of fame that you can achieve in one moment is what's changing music, social media, influencers, everything. I think it's all rolling into one now, because everyone's beginning to do all of them. You're an influencer, and then you decide, I want to make music because I've already got a head start, because people already know who I am.
Yes.
So the actual natural born musicians who are doing it for passion must be beside themselves.
Yeah,
watching
indeed.
people come and kind of not make a mockery, but as in do a silly song, and do something that is just for attention and just for clickbait, and make more money than them, who've who spent a year making this album.
Yes.
So it's a strange one at the moment because anybody can do it.
Indeed. And how is that affecting, let's say, the financial flows? I guess maybe you could talk us through, like, as from a producer perspective, from the the name's escaping me, like the equivalent of Warner or Sony.
Oh, labels. Yeah.
Labels, yeah. So from a producer, from a label.
from on a studio basis, now everybody wants to be an artist. So we're gonna get more bookings.
Yeah.
However, technology has a say in that as well, because the reality is, even before the studio was open, you don't need a studio to make music. You can make music in your bedroom. You just need to get the right stuff, and the room environment has to be right.
Yeah.
Studio obviously changes, maybe how you perform and the ambiance and stuff like that. And but I know plenty of artists that haven't been in a studio for a long time.
Yeah.
For producers especially have changed the game, because YouTube, you can create something called type beats. So for example, if somebody loves Drake and that's their style, and I like everything he kind of touches, you can make a beat in your room.
Yep.
And you upload it to YouTube, and you just put Drake type beat and you name it, or whatever it is, and the millions are gonna flock, because that must be one of the most searched things on the internet.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be a musician. Everyone wants to be a rapper now. Let's feed them. But the good thing is, for a producer, you can make money from the actual YouTube views and ads itself.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're selling this beat, and you're not selling it, for the most part, they're not selling them exclusively to one person. They are creating leases. So it might be a $30 lease.
Okay.
So you are not allowed, that whoever, the 10,000 people across the world that see that beat and like that beat and want that beat, then in order to use that beat legally, have to buy that $30 lease. So this producer who's just sat in his room somewhere, in a perfect day, could be 300 grand up.
Yeah.
Because you've got so many people that are buying this beat, not exclusively, but just to be able to use it legally, and because they want it on Spotify, because it doesn't take much to get on Spotify. Everyone now can be on Spotify in a blink of an eye. You just go for a distribution company, pay £100 or whatever it is, and you're on there. Yeah. So producers are winning, because as long as you've got traction and you're good and people know where to find you, you can make the most ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's changed it from that standpoint. All of these, the streaming apps and the TikToks and the social media, has probably given power back to the labels as well. Obviously, bar the TikTok situation, because the popularity of an artist is increasing just based on social media. Now it's not so much about the song itself; it's the wider product. They want to know you as a person.
Yeah.
They want to see you post on Instagram. They want to see more than just the song. Before it was more about, oh, I like this song. Yeah. Now it's just like, I want to like the person, and I want to know, I want to see that person.
And I've actually got an example of that. I don't know if you know Anitta, the Brazilian singer. She's like, she did some collabs with like J Balvin. Okay. But she did 24 hours on Instagram, and it showed her waking up at sort of 3 a.m. doing the makeup, getting prepared for Carnival, I think it was, and then like 7 a.m. first thing, 9 a.m. the next thing, like all the outfit changes, kept going until 5 a.m. the next morning. They were doing a photo shoot at the beach, and it's like, I like the music, but then all of a sudden, like, I have so much respect.
That's it. And it's not even just, people are just, they want things to watch. Everyone's screen time is doing that on the up. People will sit there and just tap, 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 tap. I want to see what your day looks like. Now I want to see what your day looks like. Now I want to see what your... And the more kind of known and interesting you are, obviously the more people that are going to be interested in your day.
Yes.
So I think we're just nosier than ever nowadays.
Indeed.
And because of it, stars are like stars are real stars, and people care about what they're doing and their day. You know, I don't think we'll ever see like a superstar like what Michael Jackson was.
Yeah.
Because his was actually crazy. Like he would like turn up at Labrador Station, and like I would be hear that he's in Labrador Station, and faint, and people just fainting,
the hysteria,
just from him being. It was insane what kind of stardom he had, but because of social media, everyone is becoming known.
Yes, we've talked about the change in music, and I guess the other area that you're really involved in the media and promotion of is boxing, which previously I remember was like just on the TV, or sometimes you had to pay for access. In Australia, we had something called Foxtel. But how has that changed over the years?
It's a weird one because boxing's always been split and fractured. And because there is no governing body as such, where in football you have the FA who oversee everyone. The Premier League who oversees everything that happens within, every team at some point has to answer to this higher power, if you like. In boxing, it's different because anybody can get involved in it. If you wanted to become a promoter, you'd go and get your promoter's license. And then if you wanted to stage fights, you just have to basically bid for fights, and you'll go and get your own TV network, etc., etc. But ultimately, in boxing, money talks. We've seen, the biggest change recently would have been the introduction of DAZN, which is an app-based, TV channel, but it's not a TV channel, but it is now on Sky. It's available on Sky via the app or whatever it is. It's a little bit more difficult to get to, but it exists. I think it was done based at the next generation where, people are on their phones or their iPads or whatever it is more often than not, and not next to their Skybox or whatever it is.
Well, you see them watching it at restaurants and on trains.
But it's the same with Sky Go. If I'm not at home and I want to watch a football match, I put on Sky Go. And I watch Sky Sports on my phone. Apps. Look, subscription-based boxing is not new, by the way. So, Setanta Sport did it. I think we had Box Nation. Here in the UK as well. That was a boxing channel that you pay for, you know, and I would pay for these things, of course, because I was a huge boxing fan. Problem is, there's not many dedicated boxing fans out there. People will always come alive for big fights. You hear about a big fight and you see it on the billboards and you see it on adverts, and it creates the attention. So big fights with household names are easy sells.
Indeed.
But if you're being honest, you don't sell them to boxing fans. There isn't that many boxing fans out there. You sell them to football fans and sports fans and to people that like gossip, and there has to be a storyline for it. If there's a storyline behind the fight and you sell it well, and these are the two best, or these two have had, this problem here, you're going to get more buys, more pay-per-view buys, more clickbait, more everything, more attention on the fight. So the plan, I think, for the subscription model never really worked here in the UK. We've seen it tried. It didn't really work here because they all, I'm not going to say went under, but they all didn't exist after a couple of years, basically. So apps have started to change things a little bit. It's created maybe a bit more competition. I still don't think there is a substitute for TV. And I definitely don't think there's a substitute or anything that can get you anywhere near as much value as Sky Sports, in terms of that's in so many homes in the UK. I'm going to talk specifically British boxing, because I think in America, I don't know what's the thing that people have most in their house, whether it's ESPN, whether it's CBS, I'm not sure what is. But as far as Sky here, it's in a lot of homes.
Indeed.
And a lot of people care a lot about football in the UK, and a lot of the vast majority of the football is on Sky Sports. So being able to have that as an advertising platform, to be able to say at half time, oh, actually what we've got coming up at 7:00 is this huge fight or what
Yes.
we've got coming up. I think that level of advertisement goes unnoticed, not unnoticed, but it is worth so much.
Indeed.
You know, especially if you get it in the middle of a big match, a Manchester derby, and at halftime or at the end of the night, you're talking about, you know, the fight that's coming.
Yeah.
You're literally broadcasting to millions.
Indeed.
And that is worth quite a lot. And, you know, these apps don't have the power to do that. They don't have the presence to do that. There's not enough eyes on the screen.
The reach isn't there.
For the most part, you're advertising to people that were already going to watch it anyway.
Yes.
So I think it's about being able to get the casual fan. And I think it's so hard to do that when you are not in the casual spaces.
Indeed.
Which is why it seems cliche, but it's important to have other things on your channels.
Yeah.
If it's just the boxing channel, that's fine. But you need to be able to get people from there to there. And that is not as easy as people think. You can't even get people to go from Instagram to YouTube on their phone. It's 2 clicks away, but it seems too hard. You know, if you're saying, guys, head over to the YouTube and you can watch the rest of this there, how many do you think that's actually converting?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Whereas if you hit a button right there and you can keep them in the app on the YouTube, I know it's the most easy thing to do, but it doesn't convert.
Indeed. Yeah, it's friction. It's modern day
100%.
friction. I mean, I know, like, I remember, like, probably the fight that I most enjoyed a few years ago was AJ versus Klitschko. And I watched it in a pub just, you know, in West London with a few mates. And we normally would go to the pub to watch football. But, you know,
stay for the big ones. You know, there are some fighters and some fights that just, like, demand attention and everyone's talking about it. So before you know it, you're mixed up in it. Oh, the fight. You know, and I think might be a primal instinct in us to always be able to watch a fight. We could be in a barbershop and a fight starts right out there and everyone will be at the window just to see the conclusion of this fight.
Indeed.
So fighting is one of those things, you know, that is just always going to have the attention of people. If it was AJ versus Klitschko in a golf match, no one's gonna watch.
Yeah, that's
you know. But we want to know who is the alpha male here, who wins this fight.
Indeed, and look, I think you know, with like MMA or like UFC, you know, they're playing on that a lot, where they bring in, you know, an ex-wrestler or an ex-boxer to fight with, you know, like an MMA person, and it's not necessarily gonna be like, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but like the most pure actual fight. You know, there's a lot of media behind it for that storyline and who's
styles.
gonna win.
I mean, even in boxing, styles make fights. You can have the two best and they can have a stink fest, a horrible fight to watch. Then you have two people that maybe aren't as good, but you're gonna get a really good fight out of them because they both want to meet head on and have an all action fight. Sometimes you get someone who's so defensively sound that it just makes this fight as easy as possible and makes it boring. Then we're having the crossover fights where obviously there is, in recent years, the MMA scene has grown and probably is eating slightly into the market share of boxing. Because they are able to point the finger at boxing and say boxing is so politically fragmented and we're not that. We're just going to give you the best fights because we're all under one banner. There is no escaping. There is no conflict of interest with a different promoter or a different network, and he can't go over there because he's signed to this. There isn't that in the UFC, for example. It's because it's under just one huge umbrella. It's beginning to get fragmented because they're bringing in the PFL. They've got other things that rival UFC. So the best fighters don't always necessarily. They're not in the UFC necessarily. Some might be over there, and they might not go to the UFC to fight the best over there. So. Obviously it's a young sport, and they'll soon, it's happening already, but they'll soon realize they have the same issues that boxing has.
Indeed.
Because of competition. This is what competition does, and then all of a sudden you want to protect your business interests. And that's where the politics gets involved. But some of the crossover fights, if they make enough money, like the Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou fight, then they're gonna make enough sense, you know, and enough people are gonna say, in fact, let's make it happen because there's too much money here to leave on the table.
Indeed.
So yeah, it's interesting to see, you know, what's what's happening and what's being critiqued, because boxing fans, more than any other type of fan in the world, are the most critical fans I've ever come across.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't matter what you do unless it's perfect and this provides, you know, overvalue. Unless it's a bargain for them, they'll complain. Either this fighter's washed up, even though they've never thrown a punch in their life. He's done. He's washed up.
Yeah.
I suppose it's the same in football. Oh, he's terrible, but you couldn't do half of what he does.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this is the thing with fans. You know, I like the level of like competition and I think it's good for fighters.
Yeah.
Because fighters get to go for the highest price. It's not always good because they'll use different promoters and everything to kind of increase the price on their deal. They'll be like, no, I'm going to go over here because they're offering this. And then they'll be like, oh, they'll just drive the price up, basically.
Yeah.
But it's good for fighters because I think there's been a lot of things made about fighters maybe not getting paid what they deserve to get made, and perhaps everyone else, you know, making more money than fighters. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the career, the fighters are left in a not a great position.
Yeah.
And they've flipping been punched lumps out of for the last decade as well. So it doesn't help. So I think it's good having a competition.
Indeed. Dan, we've covered a great deal today, you know, from your football days, the boxing days, you know, and the huge, I guess, you know, let's say, like world that producing and media has opened up for you. I wanted to check if there's anything else you want to talk about before we do takeaways.
I don't think so. I think we've covered the main three. Is there anything I haven't covered? I mean, we could be here for 4 hours.
Yeah.
To really go into it. But no, I feel like those are the three kind of career paths that life's led me into. They were my three biggest hobbies, passions.
Yes.
So I've been fortunate, and there's not that much more that I'd like to achieve. I guess I might want to. I love. I was always when I was growing up, I was always a football coach as well. So I love the tactical side of the game. So like, my next passion could be coaching.
Yeah.
Once the groin completely goes, he'll be coaching.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to stay tuned for that one to see your progress there. But hopefully, you know, like the injuries don't you know, wear you down for another few years. But look, are there any key takeaways you'd like to share with the audience?
What would I say? I would say, run your race. Don't worry about the outside noise. Most people can't see what you see. I would have had plenty of people saying to me, you don't need to, why are you opening a studio? They can't see what you see.
Yeah.
As long as, and you know, if someone has a genuine thing, or like, be careful just because of that, and it feels like they're just trying to give you their best advice, take it, but don't let that stop you. I've seen a lot of people have things that they almost did and should have done and didn't do because of one piece of advice.
Yeah.
And then someone else does it.
Yes.
And, you know, problems are only there to be solved. So if you come up with some kind of flawless business plan or whatever it is, and great, but most people are going to come up with things that aren't quite there.
Yeah.
And the rest, you're going to have to start running the race until you get to the problem. And then, you know, figure it out as you go along. You know, I don't really have that much of a plan in most things I do. I just do it.
Yes.
And I play checkers, not chess, I guess. I'm not thinking about the move 10 years down the line. No, there's no telling that I even make it 10 years down the line.
Yeah.
So I focus on really closely on what's next.
Yes.
And maybe what's one after that. So I guess I do play checkers.
Well, checkers can be, you know,
exactly.
a couple
of moves, but it's not as complicated. I don't think too far and too far ahead, because I will trip up tomorrow if I do that.
Yeah.
So I focus on what's next and maybe the next move after that, and the rest. There are too many things in this world that are probably just not in your control.
Yes.
That can change your life in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna think too far ahead. I just like to control what I can control. I like to do what I like to do. I wouldn't say money's not a huge motivation for me. I just need to be doing things that I like doing.
Yeah.
I would rather that than be on £1 million a year. Or would I? And I'd rather that than be on £1 million a year, waking up and really not wanting to do what I'm doing.
Indeed.
For me, I just need to be captivated.
Look, fantastic takeaways, especially that one of, focus on what you can control.
Yeah.
I think, when people do give advice, sometimes, sometimes they're projecting, sometimes, it's like they might not be the most qualified person to give that advice, but maybe they're just because they're doing it with their best intentions at heart doesn't mean that you've got to follow it.
Exactly. And do you know what? Some people, the reality is, I wouldn't say I'm a cynic, but the reality is some people will give you this advice to stop you, just to stop you in your tracks.
Yeah.
Other people will be genuinely trying to say, oh no, there's a problem there. I'm not sure you should do that because of that. And they might have your best interests at heart, but you have to be in control of how you interpret kind of what they're saying. Just because somebody says, listen, mate, you shouldn't support Chelsea, because they're going to be rubbish for the next 10 years. I can't be like, I know they're going to be rubbish for the next 10 years. But, sometimes you just got to go with your gut, and another door somewhere is going to... The butterfly effect from these decisions will make sense at some point.
Indeed.
The good and the bad. I've made some bad decisions probably that will stick with me forever.
Yeah.
I probably should have stayed playing football in Brazil. But who knows? I would have been at Carnival every flipping year. Probably would have wrecked my career anyway.
Hindsight is like a good and a bad thing in life.
Right.
So yeah. Look, Dan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Been great to hear your story. I always joke every time I see you, I learn more. I learn something else, and I'm sure that we could do this podcast on a quarterly 100%. Basis, and there'd be more that I'm learning.
100%.
Yeah, thanks so much, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to hearing your progress and seeing what next surprise pops up for you.
I'll let you know when I'm a football manager.
Yeah, indeed. Chelsea's next manager. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.